Welcome to today's Explainer. You know, when we watch absolutely incredible feats of athleticism, when we see champions lifting trophies or shattering world records, it's so easy to just focus on the physical stuff, right? We credit the grueling physical training, the flawless technique, that raw, unteachable talent. But today, we're going entirely behind the scenes into a fascinating and honestly, largely unseen world of mental conditioning in elite sports. We are going to explore the invisible architect behind so many of these massive victories. And I got to tell you, I am genuinely in awe of the difference this makes. Okay, let's dive right in.
So, have you ever wondered why almost every Olympic team, IPL franchise, and international football club now works with a sports psychologist? What do they actually do that traditional coaches cannot? It's a brilliant question, because this invisible profession has quietly but completely revolutionized elite sports. As it turns out, having the strongest muscles or the fastest sprint time means absolutely nothing if your mind completely collapses under the weight of the moment. And that brings us to the core difference. While your traditional coaches are there to train the body and improve technical skills, the mechanics of a swing or building physical endurance, the sports psychologist is there to train the mind. They recognize a really fundamental truth. Physical fitness alone just cannot guarantee success. Excellence requires a foundation of rock-solid confidence, intense concentration, emotional control, and deep resilience. Without a trained mind, that perfectly trained body simply cannot execute when it actually matters most. All right, let's look at our first scenario, conquering high-stakes pressure. Let's step out of the definitions and into a real-life situation. Picture this for a second. It's the final over of an IPL cricket match. The championship is quite literally on the line. As a player, you're standing in the middle of a stadium with tens of thousands of fans roaring so loudly you can barely hear yourself think. Millions more are watching on TV. The media attention is fierce, and your own personal expectations are just weighing so heavily on your shoulders. The pressure is absolutely crushing. Even a split-second loss of concentration, maybe because of that crowd noise, or an opponent trying to get in your head, that can completely change the outcome of the entire competition. So how in the world do you block all of that out? Well, this is exactly where the sports psychologist steps in. They don't teach you how to hit the ball. They teach you how to clear your mind so you can actually hit the ball. They use very specific stress and anxiety management techniques. First, they implement deep breathing and relaxation training to physically calm the nervous system down. Second, they deploy positive self-talk and emotional regulation, basically replacing panic with highly trained confidence. And third, which is maybe the most important, they train the athlete to maintain absolute, unwavering attention on the present moment. They literally learn to discard all those distractions, the family expectations, the media, the roaring fans, and focus on nothing but the ball in front of them. Now here's the crucial takeaway. This isn't just for elite cricketers. Think about your own life. A high-stakes job interview, a major public speaking event, or pitching a massive new client. That is your roaring stadium. The intense pressure and the anxiety you feel, those are the exact same psychological mechanisms an athlete feels. By borrowing these techniques, focusing on the present moment, regulating your breathing, using positive self-talk, you can navigate your own high-stakes environments with the exact same calm and clarity as a champion. Moving on to our second scenario, rebuilding shattered confidence. Now, pressure is one thing, but what happens when the foundation itself actually cracks? Because every single athlete, no matter how great they are, experience setbacks, failures, and periods of deep, deep self-doubt. Imagine a top-tier badminton player or a champion wrestler who hits a truly painful losing streak. A series of poor performances or heavy public criticism has just completely shattered their confidence. They step onto the court or the mat, and instead of feeling invincible, they feel unmotivated and full of self-doubt. When an elite athlete suddenly doubts their own ability, the physical talent doesn't just disappear. But the willingness to take risks and execute their skills, that vanishes. And that downward spiral of failure can be absolutely paralyzing. So to pull the athlete out of this painful rut, the sports psychologist uses a very specific methodology. First, they help the athlete uncover their personal motivation again. Why are they even doing this? They rekindle both that intrinsic drive, just the pure love of the sport, and their extrinsic goals. Next, they realize successful athletes rarely train without clear objectives, so the psychologist helps them establish realistic, measurable, and highly achievable short-term goals. This isn't about winning the world championship tomorrow, right? It's about executing one perfect serve today. Clear goals drastically reduce confusion and frustration.
And finally, through psychological skills training, they rebuild that self-belief, empowering the athlete to once again take calculated risks and, crucially, recover quickly from those inevitable mistakes. And again, let's bring this back home to us. Bouncing back from a painful business setback, a failed startup, or even navigating a deeply frustrating parenting challenge takes this exact same resilience. When we fail in our personal or professional lives, our confidence absolutely plummets. But we can use this exact framework, reconnect with your core motivation, set very small, measurable, and realistic goals for the day or the week, and slowly rebuild that self-belief so you can confidently step back into your own arena. This brings us to scenario number 3, overcoming the injury fear. Physical recovery is one thing, but the psychological scars often run so much deeper. Think about an Olympic athlete who has suffered a devastating injury. After months and months of grueling physical therapy, their body is finally fully healed. The doctors clear them, they say they're 100% ready. But how do you step back onto the wrestling mat when your mind still fully expects pain? This is a massive psychological hurdle. So many athletes are entirely paralyzed by the fear of returning to competition. They're absolutely terrified of getting injured again, and they carry this heavy burden of worrying that they've permanently lost their previous level of performance. Their physical rehab is done, for sure, but their mental rehab, it hasn't even started.
This is where the sports psychologist performs what we call psychological rehabilitation. The very first step is to openly acknowledge and process that fear of returning. But the real magic? That happens in step 2. Mental imagery and visualization. The psychologist has the athlete mentally rehearse successful performances over and over and over again. They sit in a quiet room and vividly imagine every single movement, every emotion, and every possible situation on that mat. This mental rehearsal drastically improves confidence, concentration, and true readiness for competition. It finally allows the athlete to overcome the fear and trust their own body again.
This whole concept of psychological rehabilitation is incredibly profound for all of us. I mean, life deals us personal and professional injuries all the time, right? Getting laid off, going through a painful breakup, or failing very publicly. We might heal on the surface, but stepping back out there and trusting the process again, that is terrifying. Healing the mind through visualization, mentally rehearsing our success, and actively overcoming the fear of getting hurt again, that is exactly how we bounce back from life's inevitable hurdles.
All right, let's wrap things up with Section 4, Lessons for Everyday Life. We have seen how these techniques work under the brightest lights and the absolute heaviest pressures. Now, let's consolidate these strategies and bring them directly into your daily routine, because these are not just sports strategies, these are life strategies. Focusing on the present moment to shut out the noise. Practicing deep breathing to manage those sudden spikes of stress and anxiety. Using positive self-talk to combat the self-doubt we all feel. Setting realistic, clear, measurable goals to maintain motivation when times get tough, and visualizing successful outcomes before you step into your own personal arenas. The exact frameworks used by gold medalists and championship teams can and absolutely should be utilized by you to achieve your own peak performance and psychological well-being.
I want to leave you with this final powerful thought. Whether you are leading a team, raising a family, or preparing for the biggest exam of your life, remember the invisible coach. Remember that physical preparation and hard work are really only half the battle. Every champion trains the body, but the greatest champions also train the mind. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now go start visualizing your success, take a deep breath, and conquer your stadium. But before you go, ask yourself this. What invisible mental barrier is currently standing between you and your next championship moment?